Hello and a very warm welcome to Wednesday Wondering with me, Kate Field, wondering about stuff and not just wandering off. How are you? This is the place to explore creativity, inspiration and the deeper rhythms of an artistic life. Now, we are in March, towards the end of March now, and March is Women's History Month. And this is a time to celebrate the achievements, the resilience and the creative brilliance of women throughout history. And so today I want to shine a little bit of a light on women who create and who have been a huge influence on my own personal practice. Artists who defied convention, carved their own paths and left us with lessons that still resonate. So, what can we learn from the boldness of Frida Kahlo, the quiet strength of Berthe Morisot, the fearless sculpting of Barbara Hepworth, or the trailblazing spirit of my favourite, Artemisia Gentileschi? Their work is more than paint or stone. It's a testament to resilience, self-expression and the courage to create despite the odds. So let's explore their stories and perhaps find something in them that speaks to our own creative journey and perhaps to you as well. Let's start with Artemisia Gentileschi, breaking boundaries. In the 17th century, a young woman picked up a paintbrush and defied an entire era's expectations. Artemisia Gentileschi was a Baroque painter at a time when women were largely excluded from the art world. She not only succeeded, but she thrived. Her paintings are raw and powerful, and they're deeply personal. One of her most famous works, Judith slaying Holofernes, is a striking depiction of a woman taking back her power. Now, some art historians believe that this was a response to the trauma Gentileschi endured, but regardless of the interpretation, it stands as a symbol of resilience and strength and a quiet horror, actually. So, what is her lesson to us for this? Use your art to tell your own truth, whether through paint or words or movement. It's your story, your perspective that matters, and don't let anybody diminish it. Okay, moving on. Frida Kahlo, embracing identity. The art of self-expression. Few artists are as instantly recognisable as Frida Kahlo. Her self-portraits are raw and unapologetic. They are deeply personal, filled with symbolism drawn from her Mexican heritage. She shows her pain and her passions. So, despite enduring immense physical suffering and personal heartbreak, Kahlo's art is an act of defiant self-expression. She once said, "I paint myself because I am so often alone, and because I am the subject I know best." Her lesson to us? Your uniqueness is your strength. Whatever makes you different, your experiences, your life, your background, your heritage, your struggles, these can all be a rich source of inspiration. And we can embrace that. Finding lightness Berthe Morisot and the power of impression. She was one of the leading figures in the Impressionist movement. Berthe Morisot had to fight for recognition in a male-dominated art world. So while her male counterparts, who you will have heard of, Monet, Renoir, Degas, they were celebrated and she was overlooked. But her work embodies everything that made Impressionism radical. Movement, light, and that fleeting beauty of everyday life. Morisot's brushstrokes are loose and fluid and filled with spontaneity that captures the feeling of a moment rather than its details. Her pieces celebrating motherhood, for example, are absolutely beautiful and joyful. So her lesson to us is to embrace movement and imperfection and to embrace spontaneity. Creativity doesn't have to be planned, and sometimes the best work comes from capturing what is felt rather than what is seen. And now let's move on to Barbara Hepworth and the language of sculpture. So Barbara Hepworth was a sculptor who worked with stone, wood and bronze. She carved out shapes that echoed the natural world, and unlike many of her contemporaries, she wasn't interested in this kind of heavy, imposing structures. She instead created sculptures that almost breathe. She was interested in curves and negative space and that quiet poetry of form. She once wrote, "Sculpture is a three-dimensional projection of thought into space." I love that. I love it. And what I love about Hepworth is that she didn't just carve objects, she carved space itself. Her work reminds us that sometimes what isn't there is just as important as what is there. And many of her sculptures are placed in landscapes and gardens, and the garden itself is supposed to be part of her art. Creativity is about shaping space, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. So whether in art, writing or life, what we choose to leave out is just as important as what we include. So what do these women teach us about creativity? Well, let's have a think. Artemisia Gentileschi, Frida Kahlo, Berthe Morisot, Barbara Hepworth. They lived in different times, worked in different styles, but I feel they share something in common. And that is that they created fearlessly. They weren't afraid. They turned adversity into their art. They embraced their own unique voices, which is so inspirational. What does this mean? What does this mean for us here as women in the 21st century? Well, if you're feeling stuck, take your inspiration from Frida Kahlo. Create from your own story. If you're feeling overwhelmed, remember Berthe Morisot. Loosen up a little bit, embrace the movement, think about the feelings. If you're doubting your voice, think of Artemisia Gentileschi, because your art matters. And if you're struggling to find clarity, channel Barbara Hepworth. What you leave out is just as powerful as what you include. I love that as a metaphor. Because creativity is not about perfection, and I go on about this over and over again. Creativity is about courage. So here's a little creative reflection for you. As you move through this week and the coming weeks, take a moment to reflect. What is one thing that could be holding you back creatively? What do you think that might be? Have a think about it. And what would it be like for you to create fearlessly? Just for a moment. Just for a moment. So which of these wonderful artists speaks to you the most? And why might that be? So let this be an invitation to step into your creativity with boldness, to trust your voice, and to remember that your art and your story deserves to be seen. Women who create, women who inspire. This is my kind of Women's History Month reflection. But it's not just reflection. It's a time for action. You can reflect all you like, but you need to get out and do something. So as you go about your own creative work, take up some space, share your art. Think about what has value to you. But most importantly, keep creating. Thank you so much for joining me today. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Send me a comment, that would be so lovely. But most importantly, give yourself some time to create something today in honour of those women who came before us. Until next time, go gently, create freely, and trust your own artistic voice. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye.